After 20 years in detention, a former Guantanamo detainee, Abdulqadir Al Madhfari, was released from United Arab Emirates prison, but his freedom was short-lived. On November 11th, just a week after release, Al Madhfari bolted during a walk outside with his family, who had no idea what had happened until an acquaintance with the police confirmed their worst fears. He had been detained by Houthi militia members at checkpoint. Elise Swain, photo editor at The Intercept, is here to discuss. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Elise, tell us, first of all, who is this detainee, and kind of give us the backstory. A lot of people don't know anything about this story, so kind of catch us up.
So Abdulqadir was one of the first detainees who arrived at Guantanamo in 2002. He was abducted by American forces in Pakistan in late 2001. He would have been flown hooded and shackled to Guantanamo Bay prison, where he then was held indefinitely as a suspected member of Al-Qaeda for about 14 years. And the reason why we don't know about this detainee is because he hasn't been released ever to write a memoir, tell his story to the press. This is one of the detainees who we really have never seen any reporting done about at all. And he ended up in the United Arab Emirates with 17 other Yemeni men who were transferred there when Obama tried to get a lot of these men out of Guantanamo after not being able to close the prison at all because of what happened with Congress during Obama's 2 terms. And what happened when he went to the UAE is that, along with these other men, after they were promised rehabilitation in this third-party deal, the reason that they went to the United Arab Emirates instead of their home country of Yemen in the first place was because Yemen, of course, was embroiled in a civil war since 2014. So by 2016, the State Department was looking for third countries, basically, to take these men. And because we have such a lovely relationship with the United Arab Emirates, they were sent there.
And so, Elise, is there any reason at all to think that he had any even remote connection to Al-Qaeda?
So here are the facts, Ryan. I mean, in the CIA's dragnet post 9/11, these flyers were dropped basically across, Afghanistan, across Pakistan, offering reward money for men who, they suspected, had anything to do with the events of 9/11. But the fact is, a lot of these men didn't even know that 9/11 had happened. We're in Pakistan, we're in Afghanistan for other reasons. Abdulqadir was a medical student. He was a physician's assistant, his family told me. His dream was to become a doctor. My friend Mansour Adayfi, who was at Guantanamo, told me that his nickname at Guantanamo was Doctor. He was clearly very intelligent, very educated, very knowledgeable on medical issues, and was a quiet, sweet man. And so what the United States did was accused him of being, bin Laden's bodyguard, and held him there without charge, incommunicado for probably 10 years before he was ever given a lawyer, family phone calls, and access to, the international community of the Red Cross to set up those video calls with his family. And what happens with these men is that they are told over and over again these lies that the United States military has created resurface constantly when we're talking about these men from Guantanamo. It's like, even though they were cleared, even though they were released, even though they were sold for bounty money by, whoever in Afghanistan who was looking to make $5,000 US, it's like we can't give up the ghost that, these men were innocent. It's come out now from multiple different sources that 86% of these detainees never had anything to do with Al-Qaeda in the first place. And
so then he gets released from Guantanamo, but he gets sent to the Emiratis. So how long does he stay in prison there? How long does the UAE keep him locked up? And under do we know what kind of conditions he was kept in there?
We don't know too much, Ryan, but what we do know of these detainees who were sent to the United Arab Emirates is that they were basically arbitrarily detained and imprisoned quite immediately. I was told by the family that they were not speaking to Abdulqadir the entire 5 years that he was there. They believe that he was severely tortured, and they believe that he was held in solitary confinement for the entirety of his time there. And I want to talk about the mental impact that that had on this man.
Which shows up in what happened in Yemen. So yeah, tell us about that. So then he finally gets released. They send him to Yemen, which is still a war-torn country, which undermines the whole reason for sending him to the UAE 5 years earlier. What happens once he gets to Yemen?
So he arrives, he's basically resurfaced in Yemen because we don't know where he was being held during that entirety of the time that he was with the Emirati forces. And when he arrives in Yemen, the family is not told anything about his condition, how he is. They simply receive a message that says Abdulqadir, is here at this base in Mukalla, and please come pick him up. And so from Sana'a, his brother and his uncle drive to the base, and for 5 days, Ryan, they are unable to convince Abdulqadir, their immediate family, to even get in the car with them. He has, from this man at Guantanamo who was speaking with them, seemed okay. He's now deteriorated so much that he is now unable to even recognize who they are. They have to blindfold him to get him in the car after 5 days to even go home with them. The Emirati forces put a blindfold on him and brought him home to their house in Sana'a. And what happens then when he is at home with these people, his sister comes to greet him. He refuses to talk to her. He accuses her of being an Emirati, security person who's playing a trick on them. A trick on him. And he is completely unable to communicate with them and doesn't know who they are. And so then he decides to take a walk and literally flees from his own family members.
In a recent New York Times piece, the publication describes life beyond the Guantanamo Bay's prison. With 6,000 residents, a McDonald's drive-thru, bars, and ball fields, the Times writes, it has the trappings of small-town America and the amenities of a college campus. Danny Haifong, a contributing editor of Black Agenda Report and co-host of The Left Lens, notes on Twitter, Guantanamo Bay Navy Base illegally occupies Cuba and is part of a broad apparatus of torture and surveillance. But life seems to be going well for the occupiers. Is that a fair evaluation of the situation in Guantanamo Bay?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on this Guantanamo piece. First, I think that we should be fair here in that Carol Rosenberg, who wrote the text for this photo essay, has been the preeminent reporter covering Guantanamo Bay for 20 years. I mean, she was at the Miami Herald, and now her entire beat at the New York Times is to cover this detention center, the military tribunals that are happening there for the few men that actually have ever been charged and taken to what we can call sort of a trial. And so, but what this piece did was I was really shocked that this was something that came from Carol Rosenberg at the New York Times. Instead of saying that all of these photographs, needed to be carefully reviewed by the military censor, in the very caption of the photograph, they kind of put it into, the piece in the article, and then, decided to start the piece off with saying, oh, well, let's forget about the image of the 20 men in orange jumpsuits being taken to the military camp here. It's not just that. And I'm sorry, when you try to separate, the men in orange jumpsuits, the detention center, and turn the lens the other way, it does seek to erase what is happening there, that this is a legacy of torture that continues, that there are more than 10 men there who have never been charged, that are held indefinitely, and that are cleared for release, and what has happened to them. And they also are beginning the process now with this piece of rehabilitating this entire illegal, unconstitutional situation that we have with the military base on Cuba who wants us gone.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all this reporting with us. It's a very interesting and disturbing story, and we really appreciate you talking with us about it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. We'll be back with more Rising right after this.